Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Sarah Stevens Tuesday Forum. I'm not your facilitator this morning. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. And as soon as Winston gets his coffee, he will take over. First of all, I want to say thank you to Shay Abdullah, because he has been doing excellent work at the Cedar Grove Cemetery. That's off of Hildebrand. And on yesterday, he had about 45 to 50 people. They were servicemen. It was a beautiful event. And I'm inviting you all to come back next year, because what they're doing is recognizing all of those that were buried in this grave and on Cedar Grove Cemetery in our neighborhood next to the University Park School. I mean, this is very historic, and it was so well attended. And we had Addie Heron was one of the attendees, and Jackie is representing her brother, but there were many people out there, and kudos to Shay for doing this excellent work. And he started this all by himself, working on this, cleaning the cemetery out. So, and he needs help. Yeah, let's give him that hand. And I was also asked, because this is Memorial Week, to recognize there's a Mr. Curtis Drake, who is 89 years old, and he will be receiving the Medal of Honor from Trump, our President Trump. At 89 years old, he's finally recognized, and he will be receiving the Medal of Honor, Mr. Drayton. So with that being said, kudos again to Shay and to Mr. Creighton. I'm turning it over to Winston.
It's like real black church service, huh? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another installment of Big Time Tuesday at the Belmont Center. This is the prestigious Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum, serving Charlotte as the premier source of direct-to-community information for well over 50 years. My name is Winston Robinson. I am your facilitator, along co-facilitators, Ms. Laura McClady, Ms. Carlenia Ivory Canty, Ms. Jackie Edwards Walton, Ms. Natalie McElrath, our timekeeper, Ms. Mary Johnson, today a panelist, Mr. Shay Abdullah, Mr. Gary Young, Ms. Jasmine Wright, Mr. Robert Collins, Ms. Aretha Sherrill, Dr. Blanche Penn, and our website editor and archivist, Mr. Steve Johnson. And we cannot, what's that? Tina Marshall. Tina Marshall. So you put that in there. It's Tina Marshall. And we can't forget the one-man house band, Dr. Thomas. Come on now. Man, the whole TV show on PBS. That's Dr. Thomas. Respected. Our forum runs from 8:30 to 9:45 a.m., at which time we will pause for announcements. As the transition begins, we will start with a prayer. We will ask Ms. Addie Heron to lead us in a quick word.
Wow, it's an honor to be able to just come forward. But again, and we all need to thank a power greater than ourselves that woke us up this morning and is giving us another chance to do the good will, not so much what everybody else wants, but wholeheartedly we all come together. So, Father, giving you all the glory and all the honor, Lord. Thank you. Give us all traveling mercy as we move around today, and help us to be about your lives. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Ms. Addie. So now we follow prayer with tradition. We take a time and have a moment for silence. That's when you take the time to silence your phone. Don't be the one. Silence not only your ringer, but your notifications. The notifications and the content. That's the one that really gets you, guys. Now we know what videos you're watching. When the quietest moment. We know what's on your algorithm. All right, this morning we are honored to have stories. We had to switch it up a bit. Well, some developments happened. So we have an opportunity to have a conversation about the future of Charlotte, right? And we have some members of the prestigious West End community here to tell some of their stories, history, what they would like to see in their future. Oh, we getting there. We getting there. We don't want to have to jump around a little bit. Yes. But this is our guest now. Again, thank you, Ms. Natalie. Now, if this is your first time with us, please stand and give us your name.
Coming to you with the microphone, young man.
And if you have any associations you would like to mention.
I'm Charlie. I'm in Jennifer, Mrs. Councilwoman Owens. So, yeah.
Welcome, Charlie. Welcome. We will all boost your resumes individually with conversations that take up your time and you will enjoy in our faces. But again, so we're going to go to questions. What we got? Oh.
My name is Antoine Miller. Good morning, everyone. And I'm here on my own.
We appreciate you coming. Both of y'all, please do not let this be the last time you join us. We're here every Tuesday, besides Election Day and holidays. Okay. Following today's discussion, we will take questions. Questions are 30 seconds. Responses are 2 minutes. The answer you receive is the answer you must accept. We abide by the West Side Rules of Order in which it is what it is. Now, again, we have a great panel with us. They're here to tell what will be and what was and what is hopeful for the West Side of Charlotte. We have Ms. Mary Johnson, we have Mr. Sean Langley, we have Ms. Darnell Ivory. And they will begin and open by telling us their relationship to the West Side. With that said, Ms. Mary, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Okay, I am an original
5 minutes
resident.
each. 5 minutes each, too.
Right, let's keep it time. That's right. I'm so sorry. I'm an original resident of Dale Brook neighborhood community, which is located off of Vegasford Road. It was built in 1960 through 61 by the Urban Construction Company, and it was one of those neighborhoods that Irwin built for African Americans. And most of the neighborhoods were people who were professional people, working people. And at the time, my father was a principal, a high school principal. My mother was a teacher over at Irwin Avenue. Some of you may remember Irwin Avenue. At the time, it was a junior high school. It was a junior high school, and she was a teacher over there. But we were living in Belmont, North Carolina. So when one of their friends told them about this neighborhood that was being built, they were interested in it, and they went over and looked at it and were able. My father was a veteran, a Navy veteran, so he was able to get the VA loan in order to buy the house, build the house. The house wasn't even built when we bought it. It was partially built. So I was actually in elementary school when all the drama happened in the neighborhood, because everything was fine in the neighborhood. Because I was so young, I don't know about the letters and all the information that was sent. That was the adults talking. And we had a very, very active neighborhood association that met once a month and all of that. But what I do know is that I-77 was coming through. They got notified that, I think it was it eminent domain or right of something that they said, and these people, they had just moved into these houses. These were brand new houses, basically. You know, they'd only been there a few years. When I say a few years, I mean probably less than 5 or 5. And so, what I remember is that they tore down, demolished most of the houses. There were 9 houses that they took, okay? And a couple of people, I believe, moved their houses, and the other ones they demolished. And if you go down that street, Pine Street, the houses that are still there, there is very, very little backyard there. I mean, like say from here to here, there's a big wall right there behind that. I mean, I don't even see how they can't really have a backyard, the ones that are still there. And I think they're still there because they were not taken by the state. The state said, these houses are gonna, you know, your house is not affected, so you had to stay there. One thing I do remember is that at the end of Crestdale Drive, we lived on Crestdale Drive, you could walk all the way to J.T. Williams Junior High School, okay? Because my sister went to J.T., so she walked to J.T. So that all stopped because they built the highway right there coming through. And my mother was a teacher over at Irwin Avenue, and she told us about the graveyard there. And if you know Irwin Avenue School, it's an elementary school now, if you know that school, you know that there's a huge graveyard behind that school. Well, that graveyard extended all the way across where 77 is right now. It went all the way across, and if you look over to the depending on which way you're coming, the right or left, you'll see graves over there on the other side. And some people have asked, wow, that's strange, those graves over there on the other side, but that was part of that entire cemetery. She told me that the children would come to school and tell her about how they were digging through and plowing through those graves, and they could see bones and caskets and just a total disrespect for the people that live there. So that's pretty much my story, because again, I was so young that I just got a lot of this by hearsay. And I know that a lot of my friends got moved in addition to that. So that's pretty much what I have. And I'm going to, did I use my 5 minutes or? Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Darnell Ivory, and parallel to what Mary said, I was young when all of this happened, but my background quickly, and I hope I can do it within 5 minutes. My father, I was born in Rock Hill, South Carolina. My father was a Presbyterian minister there. My mom taught in the nursery school at the church, Herman Presbyterian Church. He was active in civil rights, but at a young age 40, he passed as a result of a reoccurrence of a spinal cord injury that he had. So we lived in what was called the parsonage from the church. And that was supplied by the presbytery. But my mother, after his death, she was a young widow. I was 10, Titus was 12, and Cecil was 14. She knew that she had to find housing for us, and the presbytery told her to take her time to do whatever she needed to do. My mother was a native Charlottean. She lived on Batesford Road, right there next to the Grand Theater, a 2-story house, and across the street from Johnson C. Smith. And so after my father passed, I'm sure she discussed it with her mother and sister, Catherine Hawkins, as to moving back to Charlotte. She needed that village to help with 3 children, young children. So she found property in McCrory Heights on Van Buren Avenue, a vacant lot. The lot was small. It didn't go horizontal, it went vertical. So she purchased the lot and had the house built. My aunt the Hawkins lived on Madison Avenue, and my grandmother, her mother, lived on Patton. So she had that network of support for her in this move. So once the house was built, we moved in probably 1962 on Van Buren Avenue. It was a ranch house, 3-bedroom. I had a room, my brothers had a room they shared, and my mother had her own room. But we lived in front of creek that the waterworks department, the creek ran behind our house, waterworks department, when they, I guess, let out their water, that creek was used for that runoff, and it would rise up and come up to high levels. And we lived on Van Buren Avenue. So as a result of that, in 1966, I have, fortunately, my mother kept records, so I have here from the State Highway Commission, their letter, Mecklenburg County, claim Emily Ivory widow, and it says, it appears from the plans for the above project that it will be necessary for the Highway Commission to acquire property from you for highway right-of-way. And it says, and all formal, this letter is being furnished to you in order that you may be informed as to the Commission's procedures in right-of-way acquisition, and that you may be informed of your rights under the law. One important part here, it says, following the initial visit, the Commission will have your property appraised by one or more competent appraisers. Should one of these appraisers call on you, you should help him to get all of the information about your land, buildings, improvements, and so forth, as it will be to your advantage to see that he gets all of the information necessary to make good appraisal. These appraisals will be reviewed for completeness and accuracy by experienced commission. And that's just a part of the letter. I won't say that it's intimidating, but it says to me that you don't have any options. There are no alternatives for this decision that we've made for eminent domain. And then they, of course, close, if however you wish to contest the amount of damages, it would be necessary for you to secure the services of a lawyer and file an answer to the complaint within 1 year from the date that summons is served upon you. Very intimidating for someone who may not have legal background. Newspaper article. This is the newspaper article that appeared, highway unit leave moving to us. Says the Highway Commission will move hundreds of families and businesses in the next several years from the paths of highways spreading across the state. Ms. Emily Ivory of 1631 Van Buren Avenue described her reaction when she heard the Northeast Highway would take her home. I became very emotional. I cried all night, said the widow of the Presbyterian minister. Then, quote, now I'm reconciled to the change. I'm even looking forward to the move to a new neighborhood. So she turned it into positive. And of course, my mom at that time was teaching 4th grade at Marie G. Davis School. She has 2 sons in college and a daughter, 16 in high school. Her home and all the others on the east side of Van Buren Avenue, of Angel Terrace and Oakland Avenue, will be torn down or moved for the expressway. Most of the homes in the upper middle class neighborhood are in the 30,000 cost bracket. Highway engineers said the expressway will go right down Van Buren to Irwin Creek at the planned interchange with I-77 freeway. That's just a little synopsis of what took place during that time. I was not as much involved and affected by it as my mother, who had to make decisions. But one of the decisions she made was to have the house moved from Van Buren Avenue, and she found property in Hyde Park, on Hyde Park Drive, and Hyde Park was up and coming as a new neighborhood then. Many of the homes that were torn down in McCrory Heights, those people, the Hunters, he was its right Hunter, Dr. Durant, Dr. Williams, the Webbers, let's see who else. Those families moved to Hyde Park. They found property in Hyde Park. My mother, to her advantage, the house was moved. She turned it horizontally. She added 2 carport. We had 1 carport on Van Buren Avenue. She enlarged the living room, enlarged the bedroom, and added a bathroom. So she worked it to her advantage. But the cost of, I don't know what the cost of the move was to move the house, but what they gave her for relocation fee was $90. $90. It's right here. I have it in the records. Maybe that was a lot of money then, but $90 couldn't do anything this day. So she turned lemon into lemonade. And that house is still there. We grew up in it, and then my brother Titus moved in with his wife Carlenia, and their sons were raised in that house, and it's still under the property of the Ivories. Carlenia Ivory is owner now. So she, I felt, outsmarted the people with the Highway Commission, but the damage was done. And the intricacies of, we had, on our property, because it was such a small lot, we had moved across the creek, cleared the area, and made it a place where we had cookouts and used it, for recreation. Esther Hill and Sam Hill, who lived next door, they had landscapers to come in and put together a terrain to blend into the creek and make it very nice. Okay.
Thank you both for your storied history on how highway expansion has crippled and fragmented our neighborhood. I'm Sean Langley. I'm president of McCrory Heights Neighborhood Association. I've lived in McCrory Heights 20 years. I'm a graduate of Johnson C. Smith University, as is Ken Kuntz, and any other, and married. Microphone, sorry. And so, just a little backstory on how we got involved in the process. We had obviously, residents had known about how highway expansion had decimated and taken so many homes. Just to give you context on Brookshire Freeway, it took 240 homes. 240 homes to construct Brookshire Freeway. And so this is decimating communities. And if we're to use history as our guide, we would not allow this to happen again. And so we first, as a neighborhood association, found out that they were trying to expand highway Interstate I-77 in October. NCDOT had conversations with us prior to that, but we were actually trying to do a little bit of redress to what you spoke about, which was we were trying to get a sound barrier on Van Buren because people constantly throw trash from Brookshire Freeway down the slope into McCrory Heights. And so we had conversations with NCDOT for probably 2 years, and they just kept saying, yeah, we may try to do it. So when they reached out to us in August of 2025 saying, we want to have a conversation at your neighborhood meeting, we thought they wanted to talk about a sound barrier. So we were all excited, got everybody mobilized there, and then all of a sudden we find out they're giving a presentation, and as they're going through the presentation, we stopped them in the middle. Obviously, we peppered them with questions. We're like, why are you telling us this? And they said, oh, because I-77 is gonna come through your neighborhood. This is when they were talking about the expanded part, not the elevated interstate. They were just talking about the expanded part. They're like, well, our home's gonna be seized, potentially. Are you gonna move Irwin Creek? Yes, that was a definite. And so we kind of got in the fold about this and learned about this a lot later than other neighborhoods. But nevertheless, we are speaking as one unified voice on this project. So Rocky McGregor with Black Political Caucus, Dr. Mullins, Robert Dawkins with Action NC, Kimberly Owens with City Council. There's just a hope. I'm sorry, your name back here? Rosalind Jacobs. These are people that were speaking constantly about this project and its impact that was going to be on communities. And so it was just really incumbent upon us to try to persuade city council members, but also to persuade state officials to try to do some kind of redress. When we started off in this process, we kept getting redirected. Certain people were telling us, you need to go to the Mecklenburg General Assembly. We're like, well, wait a minute, if it started local and then regional, then why wouldn't we do the same thing to rescind this project? And so there was a lot of conversations that took place. I would say NCDOT from the start, just a little bit of context. So about 2 years ago, the reason why we had conversations with NCDOT about a sound barrier is because we found out that they were demolishing trees, cutting trees down in our neighborhood along Van Buren. That's how the conversation actually started. And so we said, well, and then they left all the debris down there. We actually stopped them as a neighborhood and and said, hey, can you stop cutting the trees down? They said, sure. So when they stopped cutting the trees down, they left all the debris right along Van Buren Avenue, behind their state-owned fence. And so we had conversations with them about that. And just last week, after a lot of political pressure, contacting the media, they actually got those sticks up. And we said, well, we want the trees replanted that you took. We want evergreen trees, so we don't have to look at the interstate, we don't have to hear the noise. That is sort of our green buffer from it. And so they said, well, if we do that, then we're gonna disrupt the new growth that's coming in on the magnolia trees that are currently growing. I mean, these trees are maybe this tall. And you know how long it takes for a magnolia tree to grow. You're talking about 20, 25 years. So I said, well, why don't you do it by hand? They didn't have a comment on that. They just wanted to come in there with a bobcat and an excavator and plant trees. Said, well, however you need to do it. And so just to show you that because they couldn't do a small project like that after they had already came through with the highway, cut down the trees, and they still couldn't fix it until last week, that gave us little confidence in them doing something correctly, moving forward with an interstate. And so the trust right there was, started off, it was already broken. And so, I know my time is probably up, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But I would say this is not one voice, this is neighborhoods, this is nonprofit organizations, this is residents standing up for their community. There's a website called Segregation by Design or Segregated by Design, and it talks about all the interstates that have actually impacted cities across America. And as you know, most of those communities were Black. And then to do this again with an elevated option just was not just.
All right, we appreciate it. We're going to go to some questions from the audience. We have Mr. Kent Coombs with the first question.
In the mid-1950s, my parents bought property 200 by 200 lot on College Street, which was in the county. And I remember our outhouse and drawing the water and all that good stuff. And then moving to Texas, but coming back in the late 60s, I remember the drainage of Lake Joe and the hundreds of graves that were moved to accommodate 77 all along there. My question is, despite all of that, and even with the protests, the state ultimately did what the state was going to do. And now that we have this, what some have called a victory in stopping this process that they're going through now, is that really a victory, or is that just a delay and a reset for the state?
I guess I'll take that. So right now it looks like the state has removed this project from the STIP, and the STIP stands for State Transportation Improvement Plan. And that's what allocated that $600 million towards this project, and then $100 million in community benefits. What I think the community has been asking for is an independent transportation analysis to look at what are the best ways to move people to their desired destinations, but at the same time, protect historic communities. Dale Brook should not be touched again. Oak Lawn Park, Double Oaks, now Bright Walk, McCrory Heights, Wesley Heights. These are some communities that have seen how this has divided these communities before. And so there's also been conversations about how do we cap or either tunnel this interstate so that it doesn't cause any more environmental impacts to any of us. There's been some renderings that have gone on that some people, architectural firms and urban designers have presented. That's one option, but we want to continue to have that conversation. I don't think NCDOT, and perhaps they will, but I don't know that NCDOT will move this project off completely, just given how much they've invested in it, or actually we've invested in it, I should say, because these are your tax dollars where they spent millions of dollars, and that's over 60 or 70 million dollars, with coming in, doing surveys, spray painting our yards, NV5, and other subcontractors. They paid them millions and millions of dollars. So we'll see what NCDOT says. We're trying to be good stewards and obviously emphasize what the community wants, which is not to have this project be at our expense.
I wanted to, limited knowledge, I have this documentation. My question would have been, what kind of information prior to this decision had been provided for the residents? And I don't have any of that. My mom kept a lot of things. The other thing is, in this case, with the present 77 proposal, they're renderings. We have met at Johnson C. Smith. They have an office now. I don't think they provided that kind of network during that time. Ike Hurd, who lived on Madison, was a city planner. I don't know what information he had and how advanced notice he had of what was coming. I don't even know if they even thought that they could protest, because many of these people were lawyers, doctors, educators, who I know could have presented an excellent case and could have protested and stood ground about this decision. But I didn't hear that happening. I don't know if it happened, and I don't know how this was done. Otherwise, if anybody else knows that history, it would be good to know. But I just don't know if there was a platform for the people in McCrory Heights and in Delbrook and Mattoon Street and all those places. Biddleville Elementary School was.
Put the mic up, Ms.
That's where I attended. But I just, even, I was in high school, I didn't hear anything else about how the people took a stand.
I think that part of the problem, or the major problem, was we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, email. Word about things like this were mainly word of mouth. So I can see how a lot of things went by us without us knowing, because, you know, there was just no really communication like that where we can instantly know anything anymore.
Before we go to Robert's question, let me point of privilege. Now, do you know of the story about Mr. Hurd, who was a city planner and engineer, with the expansion of 85 on the other side of this years later, the state didn't want to put an overpass connecting Beatties Ford where the 85 exchange is, and Mr. Hurd, with his acumen in his career, kind of challenged all of the plans, saying, this is what you can do, this is here, this is an option. And it just kind of destabilized everything the state had planned for their strategy to show why it's not possible. But since he was a professional, he showed every way it could be possible and was able to get the temporary overpass exchange for the community. So I know you knew Dr. Hurd, Mr. Hurd. If anyone could expound on that, I know it'd be great. But later on, Robert.
Sean, follow-up question. So I know you just mentioned the evergreen trees. What did where was that left off? And if it was a no, could you copy us on that email thread?
Yeah, can you? Sure, I definitely can copy you on that. I've had exchanges with them as recently as like Thursday or Friday of last week. I actually asked Zach Turner, the climate reporter for WFAE, to look into it, because they also haven't addressed an issue on Andrew Terrace where we have PVC pipes that come over one of the overpasses. It actually drops water right on the sidewalk. So people that are transient or walk or fight with their kids, they rarely use the sidewalk. The people that walk on Andrew Terrace runs parallel with I-77. They don't even walk on the sidewalks because they know there's gonna come a part and now since it's been raining recently, they know it's gonna become a space where you're gonna have a covering of mud and you're not gonna actually be able to walk past there. And so we want them to address, and we actually also asked them to hire a landscape architect for Van Buren, which is what should have happened originally besides just throwing some trees up. And so that's at their discretion, but I'll definitely include you on the email correspondence.
That other part about the drainage too.
Yeah.
Together, so we can raise the fire.
Yeah, it's all together.
All right, Ms. Perlinia.
Good morning. I want to follow up on Ken's question. First, I want to say thank you, Sean, and Roz. And Roz has always been doing things for all communities, regardless of where she resides. Oh, okay, is this better? And Robert is my hero. So thank you, Robert, for what he does, not only for that, but for so many causes in this city. Ken's question, basically, we might have won, but have we won? Because what is happening on Beatty's Ford? And I know we're gonna address some of that later, not only Beatty's Ford, Graham Street, Statesville Road, and all the other areas. I've been here since 1969. I don't see anything. So my question is, what is next? And you guys are dynamic. You're doing a great job. You're young, but what's next? Because I don't see anything.
Wait a minute, are we talking about the highway expansion, or are we talking about?
I'm talking about the future. I want to see you guys involved in the future to see how we can really capitalize off of this and make sure that there's other money and other funds and other resources to help our community, because it looks the same. When I ride down Beatty's Ford Road, and I'm just talking about Beatty's Ford, I don't see anything except the chicken place is gone.
Colleen, let me stop you, please, if you don't mind. What we wanted to do was to share the information about what they have experienced in the past. And then, of course, we're gonna talk about what's happening right now with the data center. We have two other individuals that's gonna come and address that. And then, from your recommendation, we have Mr. Coley here, Malcolm Coley, who's going to come and share that with us. Where can we go from now? What do we do? And so we're gonna be prepared for that. So we just expected we could get to that point. And this is from her guidance and recommendations anyway, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you for jumping the schedule, Ms. Ivory. We appreciate that. But we're gonna go to Mr. Addy now with a question. Oh, Mr. McGregor, excuse me. Rocky, then Ms. Addy. And your point of privilege, Rocky, if you wanna, actually, would you like to come up? Because you add a level of context and information as well from the BPC.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would be honored to, but this is fantastic.
Microphone. Support.
I would be honored to, but this chemistry that has been developed right here, I want to stay right where we're at. My question was, and it's looking at the past as we're looking to the future, what do you all see that is different about the past and today? What was different about this particular event? Because I want to do, as we said, I want this to become a moment that creates a movement. So I would love to understand. Thank you, sir. I would love to understand what you all see as the difference between what's happened in the past and what you're seeing today.
Okay, I'll start. What I see today is a lot of complacency. I see that a lot of us African Americans, we have, great education, great everything, great houses, but we're not in the movement like we should be. We're just not doing what we do. I remember as a child, my father and all the men in our neighborhood, they would go down there and protest everything. they got the word that they were gonna put some type of, something over on the west side. I think it was like a garbage something. And they went down there and they gave, excuse my language, but they gave the city council hell on that. And they didn't do it. We don't have that anymore. We don't have that, just go down there. And I have to say that, I'm not trying to step on any toes, but I don't even see that in our city council members. Go in there, raise some hell, make things happen. I see a lot of things going on all over Charlotte. But we have people that represent us on the city council, county commission, all the boards. Where are they? Are they pushing? I don't hear the west side. That's all I have to say.
I'm not sure if I can answer the question. I can only speak from my own personal experiences. I was young when this happened. I think good came out of it in the sense that as there was eminent domain and the families had no choices in the matter. We've got some vital neighborhoods up in Hyde Park and other places that have been built and constructed. As for me, my concern is that, and not the past or present, but I think that the North Carolina Department of Transportation needs to fix the problem right now, that the residual left from building Brookshire 77. They haven't done that, and they need to be held accountable. So if there's a protest, that needs to be the protest. When you ride down Van Buren Avenue now, and it's just finished raining a few days, what you have on the side where the fence is nothing but mud puddles. It's also mosquito infestation. The family that lives across the street, Mrs. Rory, who has a hearing impairment, can still hear the sounds of the traffic from the highway. And that's what she has listened to all this time. It's an eyesore. The columns where the overpass goes, you see transportation, orange and white containers that have been left, orange cones that have been left. People who are transient may have left things, or people, as Sean says, I want to see that fixed. I don't know if it's here and now, but that needs to be taken care of. And if those dollars that they have said that they have decided not to, go with the construction, find some dollars and come in, turn it into a greenway. I foresee a greenway. I would love a greenway there behind McCrory Heights, running down Andrew Terrace off. So I say fix what you haven't fixed. And that's not hard to do. That is my premise. And that is, I think, what we should take a stand on for me. As far as Batesford Road and the other corridors, that is something else. I think that somebody who's in city planning and all of that.
Quickly, Ms. Ivory, how old is Ms. Rory right now?
95.
All right, Ms. Ed, go ahead with your question.
Can I answer that too? I think the difference now is also that we are more spread out. I think that we had people from East Charlotte, West Charlotte, North Charlotte, South Charlotte, that were all collectively saying the same thing. We actually did a petition. Ricky Hall was a part of this process too. We actually did a petition, and on the petition, we had about 2,000 signatures, and they weren't all West Side residents. Because this is a project that impacts not just West Charlotte residents, but it affects everybody that lives in Charlotte or lives in this region. And so I think part of the strategy for me, from my perspective, is make this narrative bigger than just West Side residents. Like the narrative always kind of gets pushed down that these are like black, low-income people. Like, that's not even true, right? But that's the narrative that's pushed. And so change that narrative from something that, instead of it just being along a specific corridor, it's actually Charlotte in general. And I think the difference, as Ms. Ivory said, is we're also trying to make sure that we redress some of the issues that happened in the past. And so the whole idea of tunneling, if anybody has ever seen what they've done to Seattle's waterfront, or if you've ever seen what they've done to Boston, it was called the Big Dig. Now the Big Dig took about 20, 25 years. It was a long process, and I know that's not very popular to see construction for that extent of time. But that was in the 80s. Our technology is a lot better now. But what they did is, over top of the big viaduct freeway that they have something called the Rose Kennedy Greenway. And so you have a ton of commercial development that's up and along there. You have a path where people can walk. It's pedestrian friendly. I want to see something that reconnects the west side to the rest of Charlotte. So if McCrory Heights needs to be connected to Greenville, Lincoln Heights, Dalebrook needs to be connected to Brightwalk. West Boulevard needs to be connected to the communities that are adjacent to. So we need to be able to see all of that. That's what redress and basically restorative justice looks like to me. There's an article that was just published.
Close your thoughts.
There's an article just published in the Charlotte Business Journal by an architect by the name of Terry Shook, and he talked about how you actually pay for this. So I know I'm talking pie in the sky things, tunneling, capping, but there's actually a way in which you can pay for it, which is to sell the land that is above that cap or that tunnel. I would love to see Black-owned businesses along there, since I don't know if we're ever gonna see that in Brooklyn, since this process has already happened before.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean, for that. So this closes out the first segment of our forum today. Give a round of applause to this particular group of people. So now we're about to hear about how data centers been added. We're gonna give you the next question. I hope you got something about data centers, because we will let you holler at them after this. It'll be a very personal conversation. All right, so we're going to switch our panels. Thank you so much, guys. Now we would like to welcome Mr. Greg Asciuto, Reverend Janet Garner Mullins, and Greg Asciuto. So again, in the conversation about Charlotte's future, we have people who are servants of this community and have been for a long time. We're going to give them about 5 minutes to introduce themselves and what they're here to talk about. We will start with Mr. Greg Asciuto.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Greg Asciuto. I'm the executive director of a community-based nonprofit called Charlotte East. We are the organization that supports the residents and the redevelopment of the Eastland area. I'm very happy to be here with y'all this morning. And thank you to the panel that spoke before. I think this is a great segue to talk about how development patterns, both past and present, continue to affect every part of town, right? I'd like to say first and foremost, I'm not a data center expert. I'm a community expert. My background was teaching high school English at Garringer for 10 years. So I'm not a technology man. But I would like to shout out somebody in this room, Robert Dawkins from Action NC, who has really been leading some of the advocacy with some of the data points. So holler at Robert after. But I would like to kind of level set about where we are with data centers and kind of what they are. So tonight, Charlotte City Council is holding a public hearing about data centers, right? So you come to the government center and still speak 5:30 tonight. That is a step that is required in advance of Charlotte City Council taking a vote, likely on June 8th, to put in place a 150-day moratorium on these data centers. And I see Councilmember Owens is here today as well. How we kind of got involved with this from the east side, there was a rezoning that popped up in November. 40,000 square foot data center, right, really less than half a mile from my house, next to Reedy Creek Park, very close, in the middle of a residential area with new builds. And I don't know if y'all been following national news as well, this is one of the hottest button issues nationally, with concerns across the board about environmental impact, financial impact, general quality of life impact, from noise to potential water pollution. Now, there is a lot of nuance with this discussion. There are a lot of different types of data centers, and I'm not one of the most well-versed to speak on what each and individual type does. But we do in Charlotte have hyperscale data centers that are on the books, popping up, 1 million plus square feet. And we are at a time, I believe also, where community, right, wrong, or indifferent, feels that this is one of the issues that universally, regardless of party, race, socioeconomic status, gender, has been one of the unifying issues where community is overwhelmingly against, right? So where does that go from here? I think as it looks in independent neighborhoods, what my biggest concern is, on the east side, specifically on Albemarle and Central, we have a lot of old commercial, old office space. What typically happens when you have cheaper property, less desirable development goes in those areas. And that is one of our biggest concerns as we see how this data center argument plays out. We've been told that no matter what, we have to have data centers. We have to have places where information can be stored. My fear is that overwhelmingly, these will end up in predominantly black and brown communities on the east side and the west side. And we've seen these development patterns in the past. As we've talked about growth at all costs, what communities do they affect? What communities do they impact? I'm sorry, but I just cannot believe or see a scenario in which we see data centers of massive scales popping up in Valentine, popping up in South Park. And that's not to disparage those communities, but I would be shocked if I were to see those be the case. So I'm going to pass it over to the brethren to talk about the specific community issues on y'all's side. But this is an issue that transcends just east, just west, and I hope individuals will make their voices heard. And shout out to Mr. Dawkins again, that has some very detailed information and policy recommendations.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Dr. Janet Garner-Mullins, and I'm the Secretary for the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition and a native of the West Boulevard for more than 50 years. I'm glad to be here this morning and thank my sister Mary for inviting me to talk about a topic that is near and dear to all of us. I want to speak briefly about the growth of data centers in Charlotte and what that means for West Charlotte. We know that data centers are large facilities that house servers, storage systems, networking equipment. They support cloud services, banking, healthcare, streaming, and artificial intelligence. While they are a major part of the digital economy, they have some very real effects on our community, and we need to know that. In this case, the proposed project will be built in West Charlotte near Morris Chapel Road, I-85, and Wilkerson Boulevard. It will be the largest data center in North Carolina on 156 acres, 3 million square feet. Not 300, not 3,000, but 3 million on 156 acres. There may be some benefits. Woo-hoo! Well, construction brings jobs, infrastructure may improve, and projects like this can raise Charlotte's profile as a growing technology hub. But there are also some serious concerns, and we need to know that. These facilities require enormous amount of electricity. They use significant amounts of water and can affect our air quality, infrastructure, and long-term costs for residents, because data centers are highly automated, and the number of permanent jobs are few. That brings us to a more deeper concern, and that is fairness, and that is equity. This project was proposed in one community, a predominantly white community, and yet they said no. And so those that are in power decided, well, we'll just take it somewhere else. And they decided to put it in a place where we've had inequity and still do, where we have had displacement and we still do, gentrification and we still do. So this feels like a pattern. And when communities recognize the patterns, they should do something about it. And they should not have to ask for explanations, they should ask for changes. Because when we look and talk about West Charlotte, we're not just talking about land on a map. We're talking about human beings, neighborhoods, history, families with roots, and communities that have invested. Ladies and gentlemen, we have invested funds, our tax dollars, our blood, sweat, and tears from our ancestors and our prior family members into this community. And so we need to find out, well, as my sister Mary said, and please forgive me if I offend anyone, what the hell is going on? That's what we need to find out. We've been told we have to adjust to impact. We have to adjust to infrastructure. We have to adjust to these decisions that have already been made without us. But we should not always have to be the ones to adjust. It always seems like when we look up, there's another adjustment. Well, why don't you all just get along, go along to get along? What the helicopter? No, we should not be doing that. Well, what should we be doing? We should ask for transparency. I'll be down in the city council tonight at 6 o'clock. They'll see my face coming into place, and when Reverend comes in, they're like, oh no, here she comes. I'm coming again. I'll be talking about data centers at 5 o'clock, down there. Come join me. We should push for equitable treatment, demand clear standards, meaningful protection, and real community benefits, such as investments in our schools, investment in job training, investment in digital technology, investment in space. If Charlotte is going to move forward with projects of this scale, then we, the residents, deserve more than information after the fact. We deserve a meaningful voice before the project is finished. And we should ask for clear standards for siting and impact. Why can't you put the data center on Queens Road? Well, that's for grins and giggles. They're like, what? Queens Road? Why can't you put it on Valentine Parkway? I asked that question, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And so they said, Reverend Dr. Vernon Moles, can we talk about this offline? No, we helicopter cannot. Why can't we talk about it now? Didn't get an answer. We should also be looking at how these benefits are not ours. And we should also think about how development has caused us gentrification. So again, let us not forget to speak our voices. And one last thing, I want to share with you about a data center meeting that's coming to Charlotte on June the 23rd from 6:30 to 8:30. And I have a flyer about that. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right, we're gonna open it up to Ms. Addie.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your information.
Close to your reference.
Okay. You said it's gonna take, it's a 40,000.
The one that's proposed on the east side is a 40,000 square foot data center.
It's gonna use a lot of electricity, correct?
So the specific type, again, me understanding that I don't fully understand the exact breakdown of these different types of data centers, but this is a smaller one called an edge data center. But yes, it still will use significant electricity, just not the same amount as like a multi-million square foot
How will that
facility.
affect the residents' electricity?
Oh, the prices will go up. And I think this is a situation too, when we look at who is driving the demand. I mean, this was in, I think it might have been another Zach Turner piece that came out from WFAE a few weeks ago. Duke Energy, quarter one profits were $1.6 billion. And we're all looking at a potential rate increase of 50 to 18%, starting at the top of the year, right? When Duke is out there, also in that same piece, Sedaris is saying they're working with different municipalities across the state to figure out how can they incentivize putting data centers in these places. So to your point, it will cost the consumer more. Yes.
One more question.
Oh, Ms. Ooh, you know the rules. Now we have a question from Mr. Ken Cummins. I'm gonna put Ms. Ivory.
We recently went through a drought, and you have seen pictures of Lake Norman and the water levels. Has anybody addressed or asked the questions of those data center operators? What would be the end result if these data centers were in operation today?
That is an excellent question. That's one of those questions, Brother Ken, that I was told, can we talk about this offline, Reverend? But let me tell you about the data center that is proposed for West Charlotte. The location of that data center is 12899 Morris Chapel Road. Morris Chapel Road, I-85 Wilkinson Boulevard. And some of the disadvantages of that is because it's going to be on 156 acres, it's going to affect your, because it uses a lot of electricity, look for your bill to go up again. Because there's a large water use, look for your water bill to go up again. So when the question was asked, can you tell us specifically how this is going to affect our bills? Well, you know, Reverend, we haven't really determined that yet. That's still in study. Well, you know what I think about that? And I told him that too. I don't think he wanted to tell me the truth about this because you know I'm going to go back to the neighborhood and tell them what you said. So right now, that answer to that question, Brother Ken, is still somewhere out in the abyss.
And I will add as well, at council's last presentation about data centers when staff presented to them, there was a presentation about the amount of, I think it's gallons per day that are used in some of these facilities. And there was a comparison of how much water is used per day in the city versus how much will one of these hyperscale data centers consume. I'm not going to give the exact number because I don't want to get it wrong, but it was a significant portion that one potential data center can use up to 5 to 10% of what the city consumes on a daily basis, right? So it is a significant volume of water.
All right, before we go to Danielle, we gotta move forward. Danielle, with a question? And also, hold on, before we do that, the Charlotte way is to build that data center on Morris Chapel Road and slap a plaque on it, call it the Plato Price Data Center. But anyway, Danielle, go ahead with the question.
Okay, so two things, but I'll make quick ones, I promise. How do we better educate residents on about the long-term implications of these developments before decisions are finalized? So I like tangible things. While we are boots to the ground in the community, how do we do that? And then another thing is, has there been, since the need for this hyperscale data center is imperative to bring to the Charlotte area, has there been conversations about it going to China Grove or to Concord, where where land isn't as constricted as Charlotte proper?
There have been a lot of conversations, but the decision was made after a community decided that they didn't want it in their neighborhood. They decided, well, we'll go to neighborhoods where we probably won't get a whole lot of pushback. Where people are, as Mary alluded to, we're not as involved. We're not coming to the table. We're saying, well, that's somebody else's problem. No helicopter, it is not. It is your problem. And so to go other places, that has not been looked at. They come in here. But the thing we need to recognize is that when we sit home, and we always may decide to sit home, we need to be a voice and not an echo.
One thing to add, and I've been thinking about your first question, right? How do we prepare community in advance? Council has taken a lot of flack for this specific issue. And one thing that I continuously bring up to folks as a community organizer, staff has had knowledge of this and has had 3 years to prepare. City staff has had 3 years to prepare for this when Councilmember Mayfield started bringing this up. The preliminary the preliminary filing for this 40,000 square foot one of East Charlotte was filed last July, right? So why do we need another 150 days? And in fairness to council, I mean, this is staff's responsibility to have been on top of this. I mean, I think we're the only municipality that in our UDO actually had defined what a data center was, which kind of makes this process a little bit more tricky because there's an existing definition in place. So from a community organizing standpoint, one thing that I'm telling our folks on the east side to do, don't just know the names of the people on council. We gotta start knowing the names of people on staff that are making these decisions, that do not have public-facing accountability. And I'm not just speaking about Manager Jones by any means. I'm talking about the heads of planning, the heads of economic development, who are the individuals underneath those silos. So when we talk about civic engagement and civic education, that has to be part of it because the Charlotte Way has continued to put those voices somewhat behind a curtain, and then it gets in front of the dais and it looks like council is they're coming up with this on the spot when it is not council that has necessarily done this by themselves to get to this point.
Lorenzo.
To your point, thank you. To your point, there's been an overwhelming response from individuals in the community who are absolutely opposed to data centers being in their neighborhood. To your point, Valentine's not trying to have that in their backyard, right? Who is the champion? I know we're kind of getting into the city council, but who is the champion that's supposed to be holding that shield that is representing the collective thought? And is there a perfect place to put a data center?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know if there's a one-person champion. All of us, even all of us in this room, are champions if we so choose to step up and to come in regarding what we can do to educate our community. Is doing what we're doing right now. What the forum does all the time is to bring people together to educate them on a particular issue. And so that is why we're here today, to do that. And we do that not only in this space, but also hopefully we go back to our communities and educate our communities. I know we do that along the West Boulevard corridor, which is made up of more than 19 neighborhoods. We do that all the time. And so we don't have, I've not heard of a particular champion. I've heard persons on city council that may say I'm not for it, but to say there's a designated champion, I don't know that person. So that means if we don't have a person, then we need to step up. If it has to be, it's up to me. It's up to you.
Greg, we got about 5 minutes, and I got 2 questions from Samir and Ms. Donnell, and I want to get Councilwoman Kimberly Owens on the microphone. So go ahead with your question, Samir.
Good morning, everybody. Samir Hamid. So I'm having trouble understanding are these data centers committing acts of violence against our community? And if so, at what point do we kind of bypass city council and respond to that, in the way that somebody would, an act of violence being committed against them? And B, is there a business opportunity here for these data centers? Like, they obviously have some investment in making money in this community. Could they give free water? Could they cover everybody's bill? Could they cover the electricity? Like, would that make it something that we're, more open to? Are we looking for that type of negotiation, or should we meet violence?
Let me speak about the data center that's going to be in West Charlotte. Let me give you the name of the developer. The developer is Digital Realty. They are a global data center around the world. And so when you want to go past city council, you Google them and find them and talk to them about what kind of community benefits that they can afford us. Because they will, and possibly not tell you what they're going to do, but we know that if we keep pushing and pushing, we'll get some type of answer. Now, as far as free water, don't hold your breath, because you don't get any free water. What you're going to get is an additional water bill. That's what you're going to get. So what you want to do is see how you can go down to hearings, rezoning hearings, go down to city council, go down to wherever they're having these meetings to let them know of your concerns. So stay engaged, stay positive, let us stay united.
Samir, I'm gonna be really quick. This is one of the issues I do believe has the threat of spilling over into violence. I do, and this is not me saying I advocate or condone that. I have heard and seen so much community angst about this issue. People are fed up. People are fed up, and I think this has become somewhat symbolic of one of the last things that we can really fight against, knowing that there's not gonna be trust in the federal government to come down and support us if things go left, right? I mean, I keep bringing up and thinking about the Duke coal ash situation, which they're still cleaning up. I mean, what happens if we get to that point in 3-4 years, these things are built, you have the ready environmental impacts? I do believe that there are folks that are ready to go there, and I have not seen a single issue, again, that's united party sides and ideological sides like this specific issue.
Not to mention, nothing enrages a black household like a sky-high light bill. All right, Miss, I learned that during my youth as a latchkey kid. Go ahead, Miss Donnell.
As history repeats itself with what we spoke about earlier, what is the benefit, what in dollars is the city of Charlotte gonna reap the benefits of these digital centers? It's got to go somewhere. Queens no, Valentine no, we're saying Wilkinson no, it's gonna go somewhere. But what are the dollar benefits for the city of Charlotte as they approve these digital centers?
I can't speak to that from a dollars perspective because that's one of those questions that's been asked and sort of avoided. When you ask, well, I know it's going to be income coming from the data center. And so how can that income turn into specific numbers? So one of the questions that's been asked at city council meetings is to talk about that, but it has not been made public.
That's a great segue to Councilwoman Owens. We have the next speaking point. Councilwoman Owens, you want to grab a seat up here? You want to have
Even a little bit.
Okay.
Sir, thank you again. I have appreciated everything that I've learned this morning. My mind is just fired with all the things that I'd like to comment on, but I'm going to restrain myself and simply say to Mr. Asciuto's point, how powerful, particularly as a young council member, how powerful it would be if you do go to the folks who work behind the scenes. Because that creates for you, particularly when you do it in writing, that creates for you a paper trail, that when you come to public comment and you say to us as council members, I spoke with this title on this day and this is what I was told, and it hasn't damn happened. And that is very powerful, again, as I said, for young council members, because we're reliant on the history that we learn and what we perceived when we were not on the dais. What the news articles, I mean, I followed Charlotte politics, I felt like I knew it. I know it so much better now, but I also appreciate what council has time in the day to do and how much they rely on staff. And then that becomes a data point when we do that annual meeting with the city manager and we say, do you have the right people in the right jobs? Because these 5 things fell through the cracks. And that's powerful. And I'm not trying to call anybody out, but it is something that moves the needle for us. And I appreciate that point being made.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for our panel. Round of applause. We're going to switch it up to the last topic. We're going to have Ms. Carlini Ivory introduce them.
I want to introduce Malcolm Coley, and Malcolm's coming up by himself. He doesn't need anybody. But before Greg Stanskill, I want y'all to know when it comes to advocating, when we wanted to do Eastland Sports Complex, we met with Greg and about 10 other individuals, and this young man almost single-handedly made sure that the other group that was competing, we initially came together, did not get it. He advocated for us, and he had that community together. He went to every city council meeting, and we are truly indebted to the East Side and Greg Asciuto for what he did, because the city initially did not want us to have. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for bringing it. Thank bringing it.
Yeah, and I want to say also that some of you, those of you that watch the city council meetings like I do, you saw Safe Alliance down there. Do you see how they stormed that city council? And you see how they demanded? That's what we need to do. We don't need to let Reverend Janet go down there by herself. We need to be there. All of us need to be there, and everybody we know needs to be there just the same. Thank you. Amen.
I'd like to take a privilege, if I may, just interrupt you, because there's one thing that I'm gonna give there's one thing that I think has been misunderstood based upon the questions that have been asked. Data centers aren't profit making. It's not about making money. AI needs data centers. If you remember, all of a sudden we had a cloud, and you can now store your pictures on a cloud. You don't know where a cloud is. These are big clouds. They're data centers. AI needs data. In order for the AI to work, it has to keep learning. That's what the data centers are for. We don't need data centers. AI needs data centers.
Okay, I do want to introduce this young man, Malcolm Coley. Malcolm is retired, but he is also a part of the RJ Leaper. We have the president of RJ Leaper that he appointed here, Ms. Laurie. Ms. Laurie, wave your hand, female, one of the biggest construction companies. Malcolm has done behind the scenes so many great things for individuals who look like us. Malcolm is also, I remember when we started the Eastland, there's another group that we're working with, Balfour Construction. They used to do 75-25. Malcolm said, no, if I'm gonna work with them on the Eastern Complex, we're gonna do 50-50. And he meant that. Malcolm does so many great things that it would take us, the rest of the month, to know about what he does. But today he's here to talk about what's next.
Well, good morning, and Ms. Carlina, thank you for those remarks. As you know, I'm not here for those remarks, but I appreciate it. And so what I really want to focus on, which I think we as a community needs to focus on, is what's next. What's the narrative? How do we move forward? And as we think through some of the decisions that were made recently, I think it's fair to say there was no winners and there was no losers. But the question is, how do we move forward? And what's the long-term strategic objectives of how we move this entire community forward? There's been many broken promises in the past, and typically it's the most marginalized communities that suffers from those broken promises. And there was a comment made earlier, which I agree 100%, and I'm a firm believer in growth, but growth should not be at all costs. And that we have to engage the entire community to ensure that that growth is co-developed by all stakeholders of the community. And not all growth opportunities should move forward, and at the same time, all growth opportunities shouldn't be destroyed. Because that's how you move communities forward. But you have to ensure that all communities are engaged in those decision-making processes. And one of the things, as I sit here and I listen, well, let me step back. So, as Ms. Carlina mentioned, I just retired from Ernst & Young. We are a strategic professional services firm, over 400,000 people, and I was one of the executives for 35 years, a $50 billion organization. And so what I would say to this group, what is the strategic objective? And as someone mentioned earlier, I do believe that there should be a single thought of collective objectives of champions, so that we're all on the same page as to what is the ask of the community. I think right now there's a lot of wonderful things that's been asked, but there's not a collective set of champions. And so when you disjoint it like that, the chances of getting the maximum results is challenged. And so as a strategist who led one of the largest professional services firm, I would say one voice, one song at a time. And I think that's one thing I would say as a community, we need to think about collectively and ensuring that the benefits of whatever decisions are made, that there are community benefits that benefit the entire community. To the extent that as decisions are made, we have to over-index to the communities that have been marginalized historically. You have to over-index, and you have to get a lot more out of any decisions that are made for those communities. Because you're trying to level set what has happened in the past. And so some of the things that needs to happen to build trust in all communities is that those broken promises that have happened over decades need to be addressed. You have to settle some of the promises of the past to start building that trust. And right now, I'm not seeing where those broken promises are being addressed by the community at large. One of the other things I failed to mention, I co-chaired Josh Stein's transition team. And so I spent 6 weeks in Raleigh helping him build out his team. And I know there was some ask by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, which I would love to get those asks of broken promises and go sit down with Secretary Johnson and say, these are things that needs to happen. These are things that was talked about on the boulevard that was a result of I-77 that disrupted that neighborhood, that area, needs to be addressed before any conversations can move forward. So if someone can send me that list, I do have dinner coming up with Secretary Johnson, and that would be the top of my conversation with him, that we need to honor those things of the past before there's any other conversations that needs to happen. But I think strategically, the conversation should be around what's next? What do we as a community want in order for us to move forward on projects and ideas that we agree on? And then again, there will be projects and ideas that we don't agree on, and they shouldn't move forward, because if it's not a collective thought around those projects that benefits the entire community, I think it's fair to say, as it was mentioned earlier, too often, and I grew up in a marginalized community in Eastern North Carolina, I know what those communities are going through, because that's how I grew up. But we have to hold people accountable. That's both on the public side and the private side. And we have a lot more power than we think. And I think that was proven last week with the decision on I-77. And again, I don't think it was a winner or a loser in that. The question is, how do we all win? How can, in every situation, everybody should be a winner. And so, I would just challenge all of us to think about what's the collective champions of how do we go with one voice, singing the same tune collectively, how we're going to benefit the entire communities. And again, there will be some opportunities that should move forward, and then there should be some, but we have to over-index to the marginalized communities. I know they were talking about what was interesting, $100 million benefit on I-77, and I asked 100 times, can someone give me, as an accountant and statistician and as a math major and an econ major, I asked 100 times, can someone give me a listing of $100 million benefit? I think too often we're caught up with a big number, 100 million, and we think, or some people think, that we would be overwhelmed. But when you peel it back, and what I was told, the $100 million benefit was an equation. And I said, I'm from the Warren Buffett school. The only thing that matters to me is cash. Show me the cash, and then I can tell you whether it's a good benefit or not. And then when you step back, $100 million benefit on a $3.5 billion project is 3%. So don't get overwhelmed because you heard of a big number, but dig into it and understand what that number is. And then again, you know, I'm from the School of Economic Interest of all communities and making sure communities that look like mine and communities that I grew up in are benefiting. And we all need to do our homework and have a point of view. And when you look at the I-77 North project that was done, 3% of that work was done by Black-owned businesses. 3%. When you look at the Blue Line extension that was done, 2% was done by Black-owned businesses. And so the boogeyman, as I've mentioned to a number of individuals that was involved in the I-77 project, the boogeyman is your past. When 2 to 3% of the work was only done by Black-owned businesses, should raise alarm bells. And giving a progressive city that's majority minority in Charlotte, that, you know, it should be significantly higher. And, you know, and I'm also from the school of Maynard Jackson. I'm gonna be quiet after this. You know, Maynard Jackson was a true hero. And there was a quote that he made to the community was either you take 75% of the project or you take 100% of nothing. What is your choice? And they decided to take 75% of the project. And it's not just for 25% to go to other communities, but that's how you build robust middle class. That's how you build wealth in communities that have been marginalized. And you can use that wealth to educate our kids to do all other types of things. But when we're stuck at 2 and 3% on these big major transformational projects that give us an opportunity to uplift our communities, we fail. We fail our kids and we fail our communities. And then lastly, I'm a big fan of government. And government needs to understand its role. They're the ultimate equalizer. Government sits in that middle spot between how decisions are made and making sure that all communities are uplifted and over-indexing on those communities that are not. And I would say our government, in some cases they have, in many cases they have not. And so I challenge government to do its job in making sure that processes are fair and that things are co-developed with the entire community and government steps in when it's not. So let me stop there and answer any questions.
Well, I'll tell you what, one part of government that's working on our side is Mr. Terry Bradley, who has just allowed us to keep this room until 10:30. So thank you, City of Charlotte, and Terry Bradley don't have to go anywhere right now. We will extend the forum. And I also have the first question, Mr. Coley.
Yes, sir.
In the idea of what you just, all that you just said, and one thing about this whole I-77 lane expansion or land encroachment, however you see it, project, has showed me that one of the quotes I live by, sometimes you have to agree to things you don't necessarily agree with for the betterment of a deal. However, when the standard for us is Rickety Rocket and we don't have a place to advocate for, we've never won. What is the victory? What do we fight for to not just be in the red or just to get to the black? How can we actually engage positive community benefits that match any other community's benefit and know what to fight for?
That's a great question, and I think Brother Samir made a comment earlier. There are going to be certain times where you're going to have to over-index in things that may not be directly related to the project in itself. Because there's just certain things. Like for an example, in order for a particular project to move forward, the argument should be, how do we eradicate food deserts on the west side? It may not be directly related to that project, but hey, in order for us to move forward on something, we need to eradicate water insecurity. We need to eradicate, food deserts. I was in a meeting the other day, and they're building a new Publix in downtown, and the argument was, yeah, we don't have the growth to support it, but we're gonna grow into it. The growth is already on the west side. Why don't we have grocery stores on the west side. But to the point being, is that we just have to over-index in other things and say, okay, if you want us to support this, here are 10 other things that we need. It may or may not be directly related to that particular project. But at the same time, it's not going to be at the total sacrifice of the people who are making the ultimate sacrifice. Because when you disrupt people's neighborhoods, you're just disrupting their livelihoods, especially if they live in those communities, they worship in those communities, their friends and their families are in those communities. We have to make sure whatever happens that they are the ultimate beneficiaries. You know, one of the things I was having a conversation and debate with someone in the community was asking someone to disrupt their community and move somewhere else. I mean, if you are able to prove to them that is in their best interest, it has to be worth it. You can't pay them market. I mean, you have to over-index 3, 4, 5 times. Because market may be a couple $100,000 where they live now. My argument, you can't live anywhere in Charlotte for a couple $100,000. So if you're asking someone to disrupt their lives, disrupt their communities, disrupt place where they worship, disrupt with their friends, to move somewhere else, if that house is worth $200,000, you pay them $750,000. Because then you give them a chance. Even though they're disrupting a lot of their day-to-day livelihood, they're going to have to go to another community, but you got to give them enough in a way that they can afford to live in a new community. So we're going to have to, when I say over-index, that's what I mean. You're going to have to over-index by asking people to disrupt what they're doing for the betterment for the overall community.
All right, is that it?
Good morning. Thank you. I had the opportunity last week to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and those of you that know about Black Wall Street. Okay, there's a quote, doing the same thing, expecting different results. How do you, and maybe you have a plan, everybody has plans, and you may keep it to yourself what your plan is, but what are we gonna do different?
That's a great question. I'm not gonna go to Tulsa. I'm gonna go to 1898, the Wilmington, North Carolina, where I went to school. And we all know what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the plan has to be a collective plan of forces that are all moving in the same way. Through numbers is power. But if we're all doing separate things, then you're so disaggregated, you're not as powerful, as a collective group. And then second, I would say it has to be a community development plan. It can't be what I think, or what you think, or what he thinks, or what she thinks. What is the collective ask of the overall community that benefits the greater good of the community? And that's where, strategically, I think the community gotta have a much better strategic plan. What is the ask? If you're asking to disrupt this community, then what's in it for the community at large? What's in it for our community? And that's where we need to be able to lay down and say, here's the 10 things we need for our community. And that's where all of us needs to get together and define what are those 10 things. Because I would tell you, we as a group have a hell of a lot more power than we think. And I think the community proved that last week. But again, I would say there was no winners and there was no losers. And if we're not strategic in how we move forward, then we're gonna be in the same spot that you mentioned, doing the same thing over and over again. But I think it has to start first with the broken promises that were made to this community. They need to be honored. Honor those, and then we'll have a conversation about everything else.
Rosa.
Good morning. I want to agree with you and disagree with you at the same time. Because I think the fundamental question should be, how might we do this better? I would hate for discussions and conversations about community benefits to be viewed as reparations or redress for past misdeeds, when really, when you listen to folks like Robert and Sean and Shannon Binns, what's being proposed is not the solution. it's not going to, A, decrease congestion for people who are not rich, and decrease commute times for people who are not rich. So in addition to talking about how might we get a solution that's best for the people who are going to be impacted in these communities, it's also how might we really solve for the fundamental problem that these toll lanes are intended to address. So I'd love to hear your perspective about how we do that, through what process, and under whose authority we come at this more nuanced solution.
No, great question.
If you could please give it 2 minutes, Mr. Golden.
Yeah, no, great question. And I think we're in alignment, and that's why I say we as a community need to come together and co-develop what that solution is. I can't say what the solution is. I don't think any one of us individually, but I think collectively, what is that solution? And again, the solution could be not to move forward because it doesn't solve the underlying problem. But again, I don't know if there's a comprehensive group of individuals coming together for a co-developed solution on how best to address the issue. And so I agree 100%. I think we're on the same page there, that we have to bring everybody together to define what does that solution looks like and how do we do it collectively.
All right, we have a question from Shay. Oh, I'm sorry. Robert, then Shay.
So, and I appreciate everything you just said, and I appreciate your comments also, because here's our dichotomy. We have to figure out how to define community, and I don't know exactly how to do that, because us that work on low to moderate income issues may not be the same thing as what normally gets pitched. So when we walk in our room, and this is what I hope you can help on, it gets boiled down to what the most of us black people feel versus the least of us, and that's how those 10 questions would come up. So when I'm in a room like this, educated people doing that, it's how can I get community benefit? How can I make sure that black people get some of the contracts? But in Sean's situation, we don't want you to tear up our neighborhood. So I don't care if black people get contracts to tear up my neighborhood. I don't want it to move forward, period. Sometimes we get so much caught up in the community benefit. The benefit was leaving me alone. You know, you can give me $100,000 or you can give me $1 million for my house, but that's still not where my grandma passed away. That's still never gonna be where I'm gonna live. So just because you gave me some money, you can't repay me for that. But Dilworth don't have to move. South Park don't have to move. None of those folks have to move.
All right.
So, yeah, but that's where we are on our side.
Yeah, and just to address that, that's getting back to the co-develop of how you move forward or not move forward on a particular thing. So I'm not saying you move forward or you don't, but let's get together and talk about what direction do we go. And the direction could be, you know what, we're not gonna disrupt our community for the benefit of others. And so that may be the ultimate solution, but not getting together and coming up with that collectively as a co-developed solution to say, we don't want to disrupt our community, so our solution is we're not going to move forward. So I'm not saying just because they offer you economic benefits, you automatically move forward. What I'm saying is, if the decision to move forward, then the economic interest should be there. But the decision also can be not to move forward because the disruption is too severe and go somewhere else and make that happen. So again, how do you come together and come up with the best solution?
All right, before we go to Shay, we got some housekeeping rules. We're gonna keep questions 30 seconds, answers a minute, in the interest of time and make sure we get to everybody. Shay, go ahead with your question.
Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Ken. Thank you, Laura, for acknowledging me this morning. But Ken actually early on did some work to start what happened at Cedar Grove. So I'm really just picking up where he left off. I wanted to acknowledge that. My question is this, Malcolm. Do you see the benefit to over-indexing education, and how can we do that? We just lost the Leandro. The budget just got pushed back. We know our schools are underfunded. We're 50. How do we over-index and make some compensation for that?
Again, totally agree that you do over-index in communities that need the additional investments. I mean, I mean, equity now is a bad word in some people's mind, but I think it's a good word. I don't think I have 3 kids. I don't treat each kid the same because they're all different. And I would say to those education institutions that there need to be additional investments in more into some versus the others. So the community, the Board of Education, the county need to over-index in those communities in which the school system needs additional investments. And so absolutely you over-index. You don't treat the 2 schools the same. You try to create equity.
I'm looking for the outside money, the data center. When these people come in here and get the money, they need.
As a point of privilege from Shay, that should not happen. So I guess we're not gonna disregard that part. So we got a question from Antoine. Doesn't have a question. Lori.
Great job, Malcolm. This is not a question. This is just more of a statement. I've listened here, and we keep saying, "How do we get here? How do we move forward?" And I just think about, I grew up in rural Virginia, and never once in my life my parents told me I could never make it. And so you go back, think about the civil rights. Regardless, Mary, if you're from a affluent community, educated parent, or you were the child, your parents were the janitors, we all came together. And so when we look at Charlotte as a whole now, we're dispersed. We made it, we are educated, we decided we're gonna move to South Charlotte. And then others did not move to South Charlotte. But we still need the South Charlotte, we need the East, the West, and the North to continue to come together. Because at the end of the day, we're still African Americans trying to continue to move forward in this community. Mary, I totally agree with you again. We have to start taking our rights back and show up at the meetings. We all vote these people in. And if they can't give us and listen to what we're looking for, then you vote them out.
That CEO privilege extended one more time, but now we gotta get back to the program.
And I gotta respond. I think you're absolutely right, but I don't think the public sector can't solve all problems. It's a combination of public and private sector. We're a consumer of goods and services. And so we also need to hold the private sector accountable as well.
All right, 30-second question.
Well, it's no question again. My name is Antoine, and I thank everyone for being here. You know, I'm pretty much on a coattail. It's not a question, it's a statement. And it's my responsibility. This is something new to me, but not that new. But I'm gonna go back to my community, who I can speak to, because I'm sick and tired of asking. Ain't nothing changed. The real truth is nothing changed. And I'm sick of it. That's just bottom line for me. So I wanna move forward, I'm gonna go back in my community, and I'm gonna see what I can get started. Thank you.
We appreciate you, Antoine. Now, I'm gonna tell you, one thing about the Tuesday morning forum is questions should be questions. And we typically don't make room for statement, but we want to make you feel home here at the Tuesday morning forum. So you get that one time. But now we're going to go to a question from Lorenzo. 30 seconds.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned power in a couple of statements that you made, and then you also said that we represent about 2 to 3% of the participants in rebuilding, restructuring our city. He mentioned businesses. What opportunities do you see for us to engage to the point, partner with the government and people, organizations like yours? Excuse me.
Yeah, so yeah, the 2 to 3% was just 2 specific projects. I-77 North project and then the Blue Line extension. But collectively, it's not much more different than that. But I think we just need to hold both the public and private sector accountable to engaging. I mean, at the end of the day, what we want to do is uplift our community. We want to create robust communities in the Black and brown community, period. And you're going to do that by allowing and having them to participate in the economic opportunities, wherever it is, because they're tax dollars. And not only are tax dollars, consumer dollars. But if we continue to allow the trickling of 3, 4, 5% participation, no matter what the businesses are, then we continue to add to the problem. But at the end of the day, how do we continue to create robust opportunities and create middle-class wealth in the Black community?
All right, we have a question from Pat.
Okay, my question is about the I-77.
they tabled it for now, but what I've learned is, what they do is they go back and they reposition and come back stronger. So what are we doing as a community, while they're in the boardrooms making their decisions, what are we doing as a community, because they're gonna come back. I know that for a fact, because over on Hood and Plaza, we fought because of the zoning. They came back restructured, and there are houses over there. So what are we gonna do as a community? Instead of sitting here talking about there were no wins or losses, there was a loss. So now we have to restructure, reorganize, and come back to figure out what are we gonna do when they come back again for I-77, because they're coming back. Don't get it twisted, they're coming back. So what are we gonna do? And see, we have these conversations, and we don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and then that's why you beat them at their own game. We know they're gonna come back, right? I think that's unequivocal. What do we want, and how do we beat them at their own game? What would it take? And it could be, you know what? No matter what they offer, we don't think the project should move forward. But we have to have a collective voice on being able to address them prior to them coming back. And that's where I don't see the collective thought of everybody coming together to say, this is gonna be our collective approach of how we move forward. And moving forward could be, we don't do the project at all, or moving forward, if we do the project, these are the asks that we need in order to move forward. But it has to be that collective thought that we put together prior to them coming back. And then lastly, we need to engage. We need to set the standard. We need to be out front and say, we know you guys are coming back. And it's not gonna happen if that's the solution, or if it is gonna happen, these are the 10 things or the 20 things that has to happen. But let's start by solving some of the broken promises of the past, and then we can have a conversation.
All right, we have former school board member, Ms. Louise Woods.
I just wanted to mention the issue of equal and equitable. I'm a strong believer in equity, and I've come to believe that you've got to have equal and more. And I've seen equity often be, we're down here, we'll give you this, that's more, but it's not even equal. So I want you to talk a little bit about that relation to Leandro and the schools and also any other issue, the issues we're talking about here. They're all related.
No, I agree. I think, I don't want to get into semantics on words. What I want to get into is the real action. I look at equity as a higher calling than equal. I don't want to be equal. I want what's more equitable that allow me to succeed based on my current standings. Equal means you treat everybody the same. But if you have someone who, for whatever reason has not been treated fairly, then you have to over-index to that community or that school or to that person so that they can get to equality. And so I think it's more equity than being equal, because equal, you treat the same person that grew up in a household versus someone that may grew up in an affluent household, you treat them the same. I don't think you should. I think you should be different.
Get them equal and then go up there.
I don't want to be equal to nobody. I've never been equal to anybody.
All right. All right, we have a question from Ms. Mary.
Okay, mine is not a question. Okay, I know I got 30 seconds, but I think it's really important to bring all of the stakeholders together. Because we have people out here, I'm looking at Ricky Hall over there, and the tremendous work that he's doing over on the west side. But I rarely see him invited to a lot of these things. So we need to bring all these stakeholders together, not just a core group of people who, I don't even want to say it. And Reverend Mullis, these are stakeholders in the community that we need to bring to the table. When we bring people together, just like Malcolm said, we need to bring these people together, not just the people in our circle, you see. So that's what and then one more thing, I think I have 2 seconds. The lady at Johnson C. Smith, when I went to that showing that they had, she said they were gonna give somebody $250,000 for their house because they only paid like, $20,000 for it back in the 60s or something. And I asked her, I said, that is not sufficient. Where are they gonna go? When they moved in that house was one of an expensive house. And now you're gonna tell them that they got $250,000? So I'm just saying that that's what they did.
Okay, my question to you, Mr. Crowley. You came to Charlotte, you've been here for a while, and you're serving on the board, and we have the CEO for Leaper. Everywhere I go now, I see the name Leaper. Leaper is attached to a lot of what's going on in Charlotte. And I think that's indicative of what you're saying that we need to do, is to spread whatever it is that we have in terms of skills and talents and businesses, and just attach ourselves to it, because the city of Charlotte is definitely growing, and I see a lot of that. Now, that sounds like what you have been able to do. I don't know if you and the CEO, how you all planned it, but somebody came together to make sure that you are part of what's happening in all of this development that's going on in Charlotte. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? What did you do? How did you do it? And you just shared the formula, is that we need to identify that. Can you elaborate on how they become so big in this community?
Yes, and Ms. Mary, to answer your question, I made an argument to the powers that be that ladies should get $750,000, but you can't live in Charlotte for $250,000.
Okay.
To get to your point, I want to remind everybody, black general contractors in Charlotte is still less than 5%. You may see Libra names here and there, but it's still less than 5% of this community. And then you have a couple of other ones. So 5% still is crumbs. And then the way we got to where we're at today is that we removed all the barriers of growth. We were told you couldn't get bonding. We took bonding up through strengthening our balance sheet, putting money into the company, and so they have cash flows and all those things that really drive growth. But again, we're still a small fraction of the opportunities here in Charlotte. So it's, and now what people don't see is that the other general contractors is using that against us, because we're now asking for more. And there's a sense, oh, you guys can't get any more. I mean, we're still not in the top 25 of general contractors in Charlotte. We're still not in the 25, so where we may see our names here and there, we're still small potatoes in the bigger picture. And so that's where government and plus the private sector needs to come in and create equity and say, we are going to engage other businesses and create and grow them, invest in them so they can grow.
One final question. Let me ask you this, and I know you're retired, and congratulations on that. And one thing I don't want to do is put you back at the job. However, as we have a conversation on all of these insecurities, and I know how huge a company EY is, what is Ernst & Young's local investment from their philanthropic side to some of these things we're talking about?
No, great point. When I was managing partner and I controlled the purse strings, we were significant investors in the community, whether that was an American Racial Equity Initiative, where it was scholarship funds at Johnson C. Smith that I was able to direct hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, whether it was other things in the community that benefited the most marginalized communities. And then it was just a lot of things that I could control that gave people access. Some of the things I would do is I would invite young kids from the west side, the east side, to come to the office and see what the possibilities are. I would invite them and have, give them opportunities where I would take the suite at the Hornets and give it to young kids in the community so they can get exposure. Whether it was at the Charlotte Panthers, the Bank of America Stadium, whether it was at the Knights, whether it was, at Spectrum. Because I'm a firm believer to these young kids, like I grew up, what you see is what you would be. And so I would say EY, when I was managing partner, we invested significantly into the community to the extent that I truly over-index in the community. And lastly, we were a major sponsor of Olympic High School, which we have been doing for 14 years now. And we have about 20 to 30 kids that go through our program that we sponsor them from anywhere from the junior year, from the sophomore year to the senior year. We take them on college tours so they can see what college life is all about. And when they finish our program, we mentor them throughout their collegiate years while they're in college. We give them grants and scholarships. We give every last one of them a computer. And so those are some of the things that I created when I was managing partner, EY, that's been going on for 14 years. And I will give my successor credit that he's continued, a number of those initiatives. But I would invite any of you, and I think many of you have come to our graduation of our sponsorship at Olympic High School and watched those kids. And we give them a stipend every year while they're in school so that they have spending money. And I would tell you 95% of those kids are black and brown kids, and a great majority of them are black kids. But equally important, we provide them the mentorship that they need while they're in college so that they know how to deal with issues while they're in college. And that goes throughout their entire collegiate careers. But there's a whole host of things that was just a handful of things that we did, and that we put our money where our mouth was when I was managing partner of EY. And that one program that I mentioned at Olympic High School, we do it all around the country. And trying to help create equity opportunities for those who have been the most marginalized by society.
Any closing thoughts?
I would just close by saying that these are good, robust conversations, but it gets back to a number of comments made. What is our plan? What is our long-term strategy? What do we want to get out of this? How do we ensure that we're all on the same page of what's next? Let's all be for something versus killing something. Let's be for something. And we need to come together, as was mentioned earlier, all in a room and say, here's our long-term strategy. This is what we want out of this. And again, it could be we're not moving forward for a specific project. We're going to draw a line in the sand and say this is not good for our community. But if we decide to move forward for something that impacts and affect our community, this is what we want to get out of it. And we got to hold everybody accountable, both on the public side and the private side.
Find the right shade of gray. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for another exciting week of Tuesday